We are very happy to see so many of you here today for the second forum that we are holding under the E-Series. As you know, the E-Series is a 6-part initiative undertaken in partnership with the Singapore Management University and with the support of the Economic Development Board. Today, in this second forum, we will explore the megatrend and growth theme of digital business platforms transforming industries and their impact on the economics and dynamics of competition in business sectors and the transformation of diverse industries. Let me express our special thanks to UOB, our main sponsor, and the supporting organizations Nippon Paint, Pastamania of the Commonwealth Capital Group, Singapore Business Federation, and Savannah Jurong. May I now invite Mr. Lee Swan Hyang, President of the EDB Society, to give his welcome remarks. Mr. Lee, please.
Thanks, Risha. As a distinguished fellow of the EDB Society, former Minister Yeo Chow Tong, former EDB board member and EDB Society member, former Minister Ifu Yishun, entrepreneurs, fellow EDBians, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the organizers, I'd like to welcome you to this second forum in the Enterprise and Entrepreneur Series, which was launched just over a month ago by Minister Heng Swee Keat. For those of you who are here for the first time, the overarching theme of this 6-part series is transforming industries, creating value. This series is co-organized, as you have heard, by the EDB Society, together with SMU, and supported by the EDB. This is our response to the Future Economy Report, which, as you know, is an important report as Singapore makes the transition from a value-adding to a value-creating economy. The need to respond to disruptive forces, the need to transform, is not new. Even when I was in the EDB, which was over 20 years ago, when I was a little bit younger, we were already addressing the challenges and the opportunities of the creative destruction that was taking place. Then when I started the PSB, and Mok-Lee is here from Spring, she'll remember, we launched a number of initiatives, including SME 21 and also ProAct 21, to prepare our enterprises with a new mental model to address the paradigm shift from a period of stability to a period of rapid discontinuous change. So we urge our companies and our entrepreneurs to not just perfect the known, but to also harness the new technology to imperfectly seize the unknown. It was a challenge, but it was a tremendous opportunity for our companies, because with the new paradigm, it was no longer about the big beating the small, it was more about the fast beating the slow. And with the reset, all companies, big and small, operate on the same starting line, which means that startups and even small companies that take advantage innovatively of the disruptive forces can very quickly leapfrog, grow, become a world leader, and enjoy exponential success. So I'm very glad to say that today, many of our entrepreneurs have taken heed, and today we have many exciting and inspiring new entrepreneurs. This series is, in a way, a celebration and a showcase of these inspiring entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs that have embraced the disruptive changes and have made a difference. One major disruptive force as you have heard, is digitalization, a disruptive force that has challenged and upset the status quo and that has reshaped business models everywhere. In particular, digital platforms, as you have heard, has dramatically changed the economics and the dynamics of competition and have transformed industries and enterprises across all sectors. And the fact that we have 300 people who have signed up for this forum, I think is an indication of the very strong interest in this mega trend. We are indeed very privileged to have today an illustrious panel moderated by an expert in this field, SMU Vice-Provost, Professor Steve Miller. I will leave it to him to introduce the panelists, but I'd just like to say that we are indeed very fortunate to have three very exciting technopreneurs today, and I like the names too. We have a successful entrepreneurial ninja. We have another very successful honestbee, and a very, very bright spark. And to complete the picture, we have an experienced but young fintech banker, pardon the pun, Janet, and a director from the new cybersecurity agency, just to make sure that we don't get too carried away. As you know, this series is a complementary series. So, this series would not have been possible without the very generous support of our sponsors and supporters. You have already heard our big thank you to them. I'd like to express our deep appreciation again to all our sponsors, in particular our main sponsor, UOB, and to all our supporting organizations. They are Nippon Paint Singapore, Pastamania of the Commonwealth Capital Group, Singapore Business Federation, and Sabana Jurong. I'd also like to thank our esteemed partners, SMU and EDB, and also the students from SUSS, Singapore University of Social Sciences, who have all come forward to help out. And last but not least, a big thank you to our very hardworking organizing committee, led very ably by our energetic Daisy Go. Still sending emails, still inviting people to the forum. At the last forum, I said that they don't seem to need much sleep. Today, I can confirm that. Judging by all the emails that have been flying, at all hours of the night. So thank you, team, for the very hard work, for working so hard day and night. And finally, thank you everyone for coming. Professor Miller has promised us a very good forum, informative and inspiring, and entertaining and engaging. I think we will not be disappointed. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Lee. We now proceed to the panel discussion where we have 5 distinguished panelists. They are Ms. Gwenda Fong, Director of Strategy at the Cybersecurity Agency, Mr. Lai Chang Wen, CEO and co-founder of Ninja Van, Mr. Joel Sng, CEO and co-founder of honestbee, Mr. Wong Joo Seng, CEO and founder of Spark Systems, and Ms. Janet Young, Managing Director and Head of Group Channels and Digitalization at UOB. So the panel discussion with Q&A will be moderated by Professor Stephen Miller, Vice Provost for Research and Professor of Information Systems Practice at SMU. So panelists and Professor Miller, may I invite you to take your seats on stage.
Thank you, everybody, for being here on a Tuesday afternoon at this hour, and we really appreciate that. Here's how we're going to proceed. I'm going to say something about the panelists. Now, before we sort of get into all the details on that, I'd like to thank the organizing team, the EDB Society, working with SMU CorpCom, and they actually have a very tightly written, clearly stated, nice little statement of everybody, right? And I'm going to just refer you to that. And to make it easy to remember, because sometimes the way you organize things makes it easier to remember, we introduce the people in alphabetic order, all right? And that's a good way to introduce people. But I'm going to take another conceptual frame for introducing them that I think will set the tone for today's discussion, all right? Can you hear me now? All right. Business, digital platforms, transformation, all right? We're going to really work these three themes and work with the panelists so that they really share their experience at the intersection of these three topics. Now, two of our panelists work in the world of all digital. And what do I mean that? That means everything they do, everything involved in their business transactions, it's all the world of digital bits. It's all virtual. It's all cyber. And that would be Janet from UOB, right? Because basically, we're sort of past the days where people put gold in the vault anymore. Banking services are essentially a digital asset. And that would be Wong Joo Seng, who's working with a smaller company. I don't know if it's appropriate to call it a startup. Okay. That's a new type of foreign exchange trading, aggregation and trading platform. He'll explain. But they're in a world of digital platforms, and the thing that they're dealing and the buying and the selling and the interaction with the customers, it's all digital, all right? Now, if you think of some of you who might use a taxi service or a grocery service, you realize that the thing you want is actually a real physical, old-fashioned good that you want to hold in your hand or that you need to physically experience, all right? And two of our panelists are in a world that people now call O2O. Now, I'm not inventing this word, O2O. O, the number 2, O. What does that mean? Online to offline. It means using a digital platform, but using it to deliver physical services. Well, gee, what's that mean? Well, what's Airbnb? When you go stay in someone's house, that's like a physical thing, right? That's not bits streaming off the internet. That's a physical experience, but you're doing it through a digital platform. So then we have Lai Chang Wen with Ninja Van, and they're delivering, but he'll explain how platforms play a fundamental role in their business. And Joel, or Joel, how do I pronounce it? Joel. Joel is the dad of Superman. Okay? So Joel or Sung, all right, or Sun, he's got a few variants of his last name, who has been in this platform business for a long time, most recently with honestbee, which again deals with the delivery of physical services, but the digital platform plays a role. And then Joel, from maybe 10 or 12 years ago, has been involved in companies that are well known for working in the platform space, all right? So here's what I'm going to ask my panelists as a way of starting off and as a way of really getting to the heart of the theme. Business, digital platforms, and transformation. Business, digital platforms, and transformation. I'm going to ask each of our panelists will go in order, and there's one special panelist I now need to introduce, and I'll do that in just a moment. And they're going to talk about what business they're in, because you need to know the setting. I've asked them to explain, not in 20 seconds, not in 20 minutes, but not in 20 seconds, what does the digital platform mean in my business? What is my digital platform? Explain a little bit about it, what's special about it, and then to say something about transformation and competition in their business, and how that relates to the digital platform. Now, when we talk about, be they all digital platforms, or online to offline digital platforms, one way or the other, we're dealing with cyber. And we're dealing with cyberspace, and we're dealing with issues of working in cyberspace, issues of trust, issues of security, issues of protection. That's sort of like the air. It envelops everything. So we thought it would add some special richness to this presentation if we had Gwenda Fong join us, who's the Director of Strategy at our National Cybersecurity Agency. Most of you will know what CSA is, but we have special groups within the Ministry of Defense and within GovTech, the Singapore Government Technology Agency, and they focus just on cybersecurity within the government. CSA looks over all. They look at the total cyber infrastructure in Singapore across all sectors, and they probably do a lot of things that most of us aren't even aware of to help with the protection of that. So she'll link what we're saying to sort of cyber protection and cyber strategy issues, and I think we'll all enjoy that. All right? Sound okay? It's a way to start. And then after everybody does whatever, a 4-minute, an 8-minute sort of, here's who I am, here's my business, here's what digital platforms mean, here's the transformation issues I'm working on now in front of me, and get very specific and personal about it. Then we're going to open up for Q&A, because you'll know enough about them to say, hey, I want to tap on your experience. And that's the part that we know the audience really likes. All right? With that, why don't we move over here to my right, and we'll start with Chang Wen, and take it away. Business platform transformation.
Sure. Thanks, Prof. Miller. So, good evening, everyone. I think it's been a long time since I've been back here. It's very healthy turnout as well, I see. I was a bit surprised, didn't expect so many, and kind of forgot how big the auditorium is. So I'm Chang Wen from Ninja Van. You probably know Ninja Van as the poor dude who sends your parcels at whatever time you want, an extremely thankless job. When you shop online, it sounds fantastic. Getting it to your doorstep at a specific time you want, it's a lot more complicated than you think it is. But we always say we're in a very thankless job. I mean, I compared it to cybersecurity just now, where if it works, you never think about it. But when it fails, you're very thankful for cybersecurity coming to save you. But when something fails in the delivery, you just get very angry with us. So we never get thank yous, even if you're on time, it's expected. But whenever it's late, even by an hour, for that I kind of blocked my entire Facebook account out because I only get hate mail. But anyway, on a more serious note, we have about 500 cities in Southeast Asia. We're very focused in Southeast Asia. We have about 500 cities across Southeast Asia and most of the countries. We deliver to the furthest villages in Southeast Asia. So one could say that using these words like disruption, platforms, transformation, it's a very good way to sex up our industry. I mean, at the end of it, at the core of it, we run a people business. We manage almost 2,000 staff and thousands of drivers across 500 cities. Technology is important, but so is people management, and that's where the O2O business comes in. It's not all about bits, there are atoms in play as well. But why are we a platform, and in this sense, how does a digital platform come into play? One might argue that you can shop online and it's a fantastic experience. The only reason we exist is because that experience ends the moment the parcel leaves the warehouse because you lose all visibility of it. Of course, competitors, the market's slowly shaping up, but 3-4 years ago, if you remember e-commerce, in this part of the world, when you buy something, visibility is almost nothing. And in that way, I guess in a more distilled manner, to think about a platform, our platform is the platform which connects the physical world to the digital world. Of course, it's, using all these terms makes things a lot sexier than it really is. It really is about making sure the driver gets your door on time, and if he doesn't, finding a way to reprimand him. But a lot of these communications now transcend just using phones. A lot uses GPS, not different from Uber, for example. A lot of analytics, a lot of tracking. And at the very heart of it, what we believe our platform is important for is our platform is a single source of truth on what is happening to your parcel and connecting the experience you expect when you shop online to the experience you get when it arrives at your doorstep. Is it the sexiest thing out there? Maybe not, but it is a lot of work because we combine both the atoms and the bits. And many people always focus on the bits part and they forget that the atoms are equally important. So where do we see ourselves moving? I think our objective has always been to cover the entire Southeast Asia. We are still a couple hundred cities short. But once we get there, I think what we have is we have the widest network of a physical digital network. I don't think you can find that anywhere, not in a banking network, not in a convenience store network, nothing. We have the widest physical network, which is digitally connected, which can serve all 700 million Southeast Asians today. And with that, we think we can analyze and look at a lot of these transaction data to understand the more opaque and dark world of social commerce. So I think those in Singapore don't really understand this, don't really see this. In Indonesia, 30-40% of all purchases go through Facebook. It's amazing. But nobody has any idea what's really happening. But we have. We see exactly who is selling to who. We see who the sellers are, we see who the buyers are, we understand the frequency of purchase, and all this is information captured by us. We are working with a lot of big FMCG brands now to leverage off these kind of networks, to understand how we can pump through new products through all these more opaque networks which we are seeing on the back of actual digital physical interactions. So will these succeed? I hope so, but I think the next couple of years is very clear that the simple traditional platform, which has now been sexed up into a more digital platform, will continue to get you your e-commerce parcels on time. But the future is still very open, and I think that's why we're happy to answer many questions here on how you evolve, how you develop, but it's always open to us and we're always hopeful.
Now, I had spoken to Gwenda when we were in our prep room, and it's easier for her to make her comments after everybody speaks and we set the context of all the businesses. So acknowledging that, and we'll come back to Gwenda, let's go to Joel and your introduction.
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Joel, and I'm the founder of honestbee. We're slightly under 3 years old. So actually, I think I and the company has a lot to learn from everyone here. And I hope to be able to do that. But our business started actually more as an accident. We were running I was running a kind of like a non-profit before that. And the goal of it was actually how do we create jobs? How do we create employment opportunities? As a business and as a company, non-profits basically never really do that. So for me, as where honestbee was and is, what I wanted to do was be able to figure out how could we enable people to be able to use a mobile platform, or use a mobile phone to be able to find working opportunities quite efficiently. And one of the end result of what it is that we have built today is really a e-commerce platform. And we've been able to roll this out across 8 countries. So we are down south in Indonesia all the way up to Japan. And one of the other realizations that we came to come upon was that what the business had as an impact wasn't just on the ability to have someone that is, whether is a 14, 15-year-old kid looking for part-time work, or an old auntie that is retired, or a grandmother, be able to find a job which pays them $10 an hour, but we've also been able to actually work with retailers. What we do as a business is a partnership business. Professor was mentioning about O2O, and what's important about that is that we really focus on the fact that we are just about building a product which is really a mobile application, a web application, which allows customers to use it to purchase products. We focus a lot on the food space, and that's the core of our business. So we do a lot of restaurant deliveries, we do a lot of grocery deliveries, and even in Singapore we have other smaller businesses like a laundry business. So we do a lot of the dry cleaning and the wash and fold. And one impact that we've been able to have is really to be able to support these local businesses, which have in many ways been affected by the world of e-commerce. The world of e-commerce in general is really about how can you go as quickly as possible to a customer while delivering a really low price. A result of that is that you have folks like Amazon and Alibaba who basically ship out from factories or direct from China to be able to deliver straight to customers. The impact of that on local communities, on businesses that are on the ground is that they basically are disintermediated. Singapore is fantastic in the sense that it's a wonderful place to live, but we really hardly produce anything. We're a services economy, and a lot of the goods and products that we sell are basically a function of it being imported into the country. And what that impact does when we work together with them is that we're able to basically provide them with an additional sales channel by working with a local laundromat, by working with a local grocery store, by working with a small mom and pop restaurant. And even now in Singapore, we are doing like the hawkers. By working with the small hawkers in the various hawker centers, we're able to provide them with an additional sales channel that really makes them less dependent on the fact that they have to wait for someone to walk into the store. By being able to be online, by being able to order 24 hours a day, what we're able to provide then to the end consumer, the customers, is really that convenience. And where we are as a business is really on trying to be able to focus on how can we increase and just enhance living standards in that sense. How do we provide things in a quicker, faster fashion? How do we make things simpler? How do we make life more efficient? And this is especially important in what we see across the different cities that we operate as being quite primary in most of the consumers' needs, because where work is, where the demands in terms of the hours that are required to spend in the office or to take care of their children, that actually is only increasing. So happy to answer any questions after if you have, but this is just in a nutshell who we are. Thank you.
Now we're going to move over to Joo Seng. He works in a highly specialized field, foreign exchange, and the special aspects of that they work within, and he'll explain. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Prof. Good evening, everyone. What an illustrious audience. I'm a little overawed. It's a real privilege. Maybe a bit about my background first. I consider myself old school. So I started before fintech and before startups became a buzzword. I'm the founding CEO of GK Go Financial Services. This is the derivative trading arm of GK Go. And essentially, at that time, which is in the late 90s, our equity brokers here in Singapore were largely single product shops. They sold or brokered equities. It became clear as the market liberalized that, we had the incoming influx of the Citibanks, the Merrill Lynches, etc., that our product base had to be vastly expanded. So I started the derivative unit to start to offer indices like the Nikkei, the Hang Seng, S&P futures, foreign exchange, precious metal, base metals, energy, agriculture, everything. So that was really what we focused on. And with a little bit of luck, and you'll be amazed how much luck plays a part in success, we had the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, which fueled the initial growth of the business. And then we had that famous Mrs. Watanabe episode, which I don't know if everyone here knows about, but Mrs. Watanabe was a Japanese housewife who was essentially hauled up for tax evasion. And they found out that she made several $1 million trading foreign exchange. And that woke the market up in Japan as to how does this person sitting at home make so much money. The reality was they had a very old, aging population, and the aging population was largely wealthy. They are the highest savers, I think, globally. But the problem was that the yen was yielding next to no interest. So the result of that was they were consuming their nest egg, so to speak. And Mrs. Watanabe decided she would buy high-yielding currencies, Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, New Zealand dollar, earn 5, 6, 7% interest, consume interest, and keep the principal intact. Beyond that, the macro buying of all these carry trade currencies led to an appreciation of the Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, and Canadian dollar. So they got not only yield, but they had capital gains as well. So it turned out to become very popular. Japan became, and still is today, the highest volume retail trading operation in FX globally. So at GK, I learned two things, insights into the market that would drive my second and third startup. I left GK after 15 years, and when I left, it was the highest volume FX trading operation in Asia outside of Japan. And I learned two things. Firstly, that the trading of equities or stocks had gone international. In the late 90s and prior, it was trading essentially Sing Malaysia, clock, as many of us would remember. But the dot-com bubble led to essentially the trading of equities globally. So if you wanted to buy banks, you no longer just looked at DBS, OCBC, UOB. You looked also at HSBC, Barclays, Citi, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America. So the trading of FX had gone global. The buying of overseas stocks was very simple. You just tell your broker, I want to buy Apple stock. He transacts overnight in US markets. The next day he tells you, you have to pay 83,000 US. It is the conversion of Sing dollar to US currency that most market participants take a clobbering. The interbank spread is 1 pip, which is a bid offer spread of about $100 per million. And the average investor pays more than 200 pips. This is 200 times the cost. And what MDAQ did, this was my second company, spelled MDAQ, essentially tackled this problem. I was already running a high volume FX business. All I did was get very good FX spreads, blend it with, say, Apple stock, and quote Apple in Sing to a Sing audience. A Japanese superannuation fund manager would see Apple in yen. A British fund manager would see Apple in sterling pounds. Simple idea, executed, really good response from Series A, which was internal, GK and the team. When I explained to them, of course, I had to make declarations of conflict of interest. That was examined, reputational risk, etc. And after it was explained, actually the board at GK said, this is a good idea. We would like to participate in it. So they became my largest investor. In Series B, after the product was built and tested, we needed serious money. So we went out looking for venture capital. And we had Citibank Venture Capital, Vickers Venture, homegrown venture capital led by Dr. Finian Tan, and GSR led by Dr. Richard Lim, also a Singaporean, the son of Professor Arthur Lim. And he runs one of the giants in Silicon Valley, GSR. This is a $1.4 billion venture capital fund. So three VCs essentially gave me a $100 million valuation and put in $22 million. for a 22% share of the company. With that money, we went out and we started to expand into Sydney, into London, etc. Fortunately, as we were doing that, we bumped into a gentleman who was a very close associate of, very close friend actually, of Alibaba's Jack Ma. And when I explained to him what we do, he liked it. And he said, this is very useful in many contexts outside of equity broking. And he managed to buy some shares in the company as we had a few shareholders willing to sell out. And as luck would have it, in a chance encounter between him and Jack, he basically said, I have this company, it's very interesting, and this is what they do. And you know, the folks at Ali basically are very, very focused, and they go like, oh, we're not interested in the stockbroking business, but can this price jackets, t-shirts, merchandise, handbags, and so on? And I said, of course. So we closed a 250 million valuation round, a little less than 2 years after the Series B. They bought 40% at 100 million. And I stepped away from the company because it was left in very good hands. And it was strategic to what the e-commerce company was going to do. They had cornered China. There were 380 million users. You can't grow much beyond 380 million users. Maybe you can double, which in fintech terms is not inspiring. When they had 10 million users, they can boast, I can grow 100 times in China. But when you have 380 million, you can grow 1 time, maybe. So the whole strategy needed to be re-enunciated, and they were looking to do global. They wanted Brazil, they wanted Russia, the Middle East, Africa, India, Asia. And this was a core piece for them. So I was happy to step away. And then one of the largest hedge funds reached out to me after I was essentially jobless and said, hey, are you done with MDAC? And I said, yes, I've given up my executive role. I do have stock in it, but that's about it. So they said, you know, when you used to do very high volume FX in GK, did you notice that the incumbents are all very old? This is Reuters, Bloomberg, etc. Very slow and very expensive. And the answer is yes to all three. So Spark was conceptualized with the help of one of the largest and most successful Singapore hedge funds, Diamond Asia Capital. And our job is to beat the giants at their own game, right? What is in it for Singapore? I think that's the next question. Okay, Singapore is the 3rd largest foreign exchange trading center in the world. That's been broadcast. What is often not said is that there is no marketplace here. Most people don't know that. So you could have Shell Petroleum in Bukom want to buy yen, and JP Morgan in Raffles Place want to sell yen. And that order goes to London, New York, or Tokyo for execution, right? This is the same as, say, if you wanted to trade DBS stock in SGX. Even if you were in Arizona, you still have to route your order to SGX to transact. The buyer and seller matches happen at SGX. So in the FX world, the buyer and sellers match in London, New York, and Tokyo. On the fastest low latency fiber optics, it takes 200 milliseconds or almost 200 milliseconds to send an order to London or New York, get a match, and come back. So it's 200 milliseconds times 2. It's 400 milliseconds. If we build data centers in Singapore, Spark will do that in under 1 millisecond, 400 times faster than the market. What does that mean? It means that, well, normal day it's fine, no problem. But if you have Brexit events, you have US presidential elections that go the wrong way in that sense, you will find that all the hedge funds here and users here will tell you we have very high rejection ratios, meaning you try to hit a price and you can't, right? That's because the price is too old and your systems are too slow. When you build data centers here in Singapore, you get an opportunity to transact almost business as usual in an environment where the marketplace is extremely nervous and extremely hectic. what does this do for us? It means that the IBMs of the world have to come here. The Hitachis of the world have to come here. First and second level support guys have to come here. We build an entire backbone and industry of jobs that currently we give away because we send all our business to London, New York, or Tokyo. Right? So this is what Spark is trying to do. We are already live as of March 2017, end of Q1. We are live in a beta environment. We spent 3 months, which is Q2, April, May, and June, basically tweaking to our clients' requirements. And we went full live to the market in Q3, 3rd of July last year. Currently, we trade just under $2 billion a day. And the traction has been very encouraging. So thank you. I'm happy to take questions later.
And then finally, in terms of the platform businesses, Janet, and then we'll come to Gwenda.
So UOB must be the oldest platform on this panel. We are 83-year-old. So if I crystallize platform, it is matching demand and supply. Right? So UOB, 83 years old, operate in 19 countries, 500 offices. We match consumers who has a lot of deposits with companies who used to have to borrow. So in the basic sense, that's what a platform is. So UOB as a bank knows platform business at heart. It is our DNA. The difference about digital, and UOB is also born digital, but in the analog world first, because you still need computers for your bits and bytes, right? We need to keep score, need to keep balances, so they were all, in a form that requires numbers to be stored. The issue about digital is now you have transparency, you have the word that I love, which is speed, you have the word which is around ability to scale and actually data. Right? So with digital, everything can now be done so much faster. So as an 83-year-old platform that does business in 19 countries with Asia as our real home and ASEAN as our, I would consider, backyard, because Singapore really is very well connected to the ASEAN, economy. What does UOB do? And I was going to say a bit about my role, but first, I love those stories because actually these are all wonderful customers of the bank. Right? The faster they grow, the more business they do, the more we can do business to them, because banking is both a vertical, so we are financial services sector, so we are a bank, but we are also a horizontal. We enable every single business, whether you are in logistics, you are in e-commerce, you are in foreign exchange, you are in cyber-security agency, because as an agency, as a government body, you still need a bank to support you, to pay your salary of your employees, to help you to procure, and to help you to invest your surpluses, which actually always happen. So I was going to say that for bank, we look at the word transformation in one very big word. And this is around, is there a massive change in the nature and the form and the strategy and the objectives of what we do in banking? If we look at banking itself and think of us as a bank, then we are self-serving. If we think of banking for the benefit of our customers, because bank cannot exist without customers. And our customers can range from, for UOB's case, consumers, so men in the street. In the case of Singapore, we bank millions of men in the street, or SMEs, a beloved topic for me. I see my spring party motley here. I used to serve on the springboard, so it's a topic close to my heart. I've lived and worked on SMEs for many, many, many years. And then, large corporates who are the giant that could mobilize tons and tons of resources. And of course, I cannot talk about platforms without talking about the tech fin. Okay, your Facebook, your Google, your Amazon. Let's put all this elephant in the room, your Alibaba and your WeChat and all the rest, right? Because they scale, they speed and everything else. So for us, at the core of it, if we look at banking and say, can we actually serve our customers better now that we can mobilize the resources of partners and ecosystem to enrich our platform, to be part of the ecosystem so that as a platform, we are interconnected. And then comes this word that I like, which is O2O. I was going to tell Steve, actually in my role in channels and digitalization, I have the brick and mortar. So all the branches that we have in UOB, in Thailand we have 154, in Indonesia we have 178. The offline supports the online well because trust sometimes requires visibility. So I was telling, Joel, that over the weekend I was at Suntec City. I saw honestbee, huge, signages at Suntec City with, come and deliver everything just below my UOB branch, where there are also other branches. So, but in any case, I could see how, the physical and the digital actually interplay at the end of the day to serve our customers better. Whether you are an SME, you are an individual, you are a company, you are an institution, or you are SMU, right? So we can actually, or EDB Society, hopefully it's also our customer. But I digress. I think that in the current world of transformation business models, and I want to use the word innovation because, you mentioned about disruption. If we are here today and we can make use of the technology advancement to create value because the speed and the scale requires us to now improve on what we have done before. Can we make business models different? I used one example of a platform they would use. When I joined the bank in 2014, we have in Thailand a very successful business. But in Thailand, to reach every single Thai, we would have to spend a humongous amount of money in A&P expenses. But in Thailand, there's also this very popular social media called Line. Okay, so in Singapore, we use WhatsApp. In China, they use WeChat. In Thailand, they use Line. It is a very, very popular way of social media that enable companies to reach individuals. And we tested it with a small little beaver that represents, cartoons and stickers. We were able to reach out using that social media platform to connect with more than 3.8 million social media users that are our target audience. So young females, young professionals, and people who like to chat using Line, we were able to assess them and get them to try our travel insurance business, our credit card business, and everything else. That is essentially a platform. They were able to help us to meet and match demand and supply. But that's just an example of what we do. And then from there, we know the behavior and we know the preferences of people who use Line, that they like to shop for certain things online, that they like to chat with each other and exchange information on what they prefer to eat and where they like to go online. And it was then no surprise that UOB Thailand was voted Best Foreign Bank for Retail Business 3 years in a row thereafter. We were able to make use of the data that we harness from that particular social media platform. So I go back to the last point and I think about transformation. And this is a plug for SMEs. I think that currently in Singapore, there is this SME Go Digital. It is a big thing about what the government wants SMEs to do. And if we look at the interests of our customers, we are big, UOB is big in wanting to support that. And in my channels and digitalization role, besides offering branch banking and serving our customers at branches, we also serve our customers by being able to connect the online to offline and using innovative methods and working with ecosystem partners and digital platforms. So SME Go Digital is in a way a platform to enable SMEs who want to adopt transformation through using technology, technology solutions to improve, either advance their growth in sales or increase their productivity. So this, in a way, today, as we sit and talk about digital and transformation, we also want to talk about mindset. Because in that discovery process, we realize that transformation requires a rethinking of what is the key and fundamental way of looking at your business and what else is needed over and above what we used to do even at UOB for the last 83 years. And we need to go beyond banking, connect with ecosystem partners, and help to connect both the B to B, B to C, or B to B to C. Thank you.
As we come to the last segment of our introductory comments, Gwenda, you've sort of heard these 4 interesting stories and 4 quite specific and rich contexts. Sort of relate what you think is, in an appropriate way, what you're doing at CSA to what you're hearing and to what you think the audience needs to be aware of.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Gwenda and I'm with the Cybersecurity Agency. So unlike UOB, which is a very old institution, CSA is a really young organization. We were formed on the 1st of April 2015, not as an April Fool's joke. So we are, as an organization, not even 3 years old yet. So the original mandate of CSA when it was formed was to protect our critical information infrastructure. So that would involve working with our financial institutions, government networks, healthcare systems, for instance, to make sure that the delivery of essential services would not be disrupted should there be any attacks or any attempts to impact the underlying infrastructure. The other mandate was to focus on industry development. So those were the 2 big areas that we focused on as a start. But as we kind of went along and thought a little bit more about cybersecurity and the different threats and the operating environment, we soon realized that we can't just focus on the critical information infrastructure systems, nor can we only focus on industry, because the truth of the matter is 99% of the computer networks and systems out there are owned by businesses, private businesses, enterprises. So we thought that it was also really important for us to reach out to business owners, to the SMEs, and to private companies and even individuals to kind of increase the level of awareness of cybersecurity, what it is, to demystify it in a way, and to equip people with the knowledge, the know-how of how they need to take measures to keep themselves safe. The other issue that we realized was that given cybersecurity, or given the operating environment that we've heard from all these panelists, it is about creating a borderless kind of transaction platform. But that is the upside, but that's exactly what makes it really challenging as well, because cyber threats are also borderless. And we face attacks from different countries, and as part of our response, we realized that we needed to set in place international partnerships to strengthen that kind of coordination and more effective response. So about 1.5 years after we were formed, we issued the Singapore Cybersecurity Strategy, which comprises 4 thrusts. First is to strengthen the resilience of our critical information infrastructure, to mobilize businesses and individuals to kind of make our cyberspace safer, and to reach out to businesses and individuals, as well as to strengthen our international collaboration. So with that, that kind of broadly set the context or the different areas of work that we focused on. And some of you might know that just last month we've passed the Cybersecurity Act in Parliament, and that basically kind of formalizes the legal powers that our organization has in order to work with the various critical sectors. But the approach that we want to take in reaching out to businesses and individuals is quite different, because when it comes to essential services and these infrastructure, we can take a more, I suppose, a harder stance in terms of requiring people to put in place certain cyber security measures and to put in place certain preventive or to have response plans in place. But in terms of reaching out to the business community, it's quite different. So from what we have heard today, it's just really interesting to hear all the different opportunities that businesses have kind of leveraged on technology in order to expand their reach and their scale. But with this increased digitalization, it also makes the companies and the businesses a lot more susceptible to cyber risks. And this is something that we need to reach out to businesses to help people realize that it is a collective responsibility in order to address some of these risks. Government cannot do everything alone, and we want to get businesses to do their part. So as we've been talking to a lot of businesses, we realized that maybe not so for the panelists or the companies represented here, but for a lot of the SMEs that Janet referred to, when they want to go digital, when they want to digitalize their business processes, a lot of them may not actually know then what to do about the cybersecurity aspects. It's kind of a difficult thing for them to do. But we want to, and a lot of them actually do just relegate the decision about IT issues, about computer security issues. They just leave it to the IT team to make the decisions. But the point that we're trying to make to companies is that the CEO themselves, or even the board of management, they do need to take a stronger interest and make that decision as to cybersecurity issues, because the amount of investment that you put into cybersecurity has a direct impact on your business risk. You can't just leave it to the IT people to decide one way or the other, because very often it could be seen as a business cost as opposed to a really important thing to put in place in order to kind of safeguard against possible disruption to businesses, or even loss of your company's reputation, or loss of data, as we've seen some high-profile cases in the past few years. So that's the point that we're trying to make to CEOs, that it needs to be a decision taken at the boardroom rather than the back room. And just to give a quick example of the kind of trade-offs that we are talking about. So the board or the CEO might need to make a decision regarding the trade-off between the cost, the security, and the usability of a system. It's not possible to have all three. A simple analogy would be, let's say you're buying a house. You want a big house, you want a good location, and you want a cheap price. It's just not possible. Something has to give. So it's a decision that the CEOs or the boards, they have to make the decision as to if it's a trilemma between cost, security, and usability, what gives, and then they have to make the assessment as to then what's the residual kind of risk that the business has to bear. So these are some of the, I suppose, the mindset change and the awareness that we're trying to get out there to businesses.
Well, that's quite a good introduction. Let's open it now for Q&A. You've got a feel of who our panelists are. You've got a feel of where they're working, what they're doing, some between the intros and what they've said, a sense of expertise. I mean, I have in my own head like a bunch of questions, but I want to give the audience time. You might need some warm-up time, but you're at SMU. You just have to ask questions. And if you don't, we start calling on you. Please come up to the mic, and in my role as moderator, come up to the mic. Ask one question at a time. It helps the audience and it helps the panelists. If you have 2 or 3 questions, just sort of let's one at a time. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Taka from Hakobo. Actually, my company is incubated by PSA, so providing the digital platform for shipping. So it's interesting. I had a question to Mr. Lai and also Janet. I learned from your, the physical digital network, which is also linking up to the O2O. And also you mentioned about the the transparency, speed, scale of data, which is great. This is about customer actually need it, and also customer will be better, definitely. So this is now where I'm thinking, what is cross-border challenges? We have a lot of challenges here, and also, but we can see a lot of potential in the market for cross-border thinking. So what is overcoming maybe the logistics in South Asia? For my thinking is, at the government level, at the ASEAN government level, they are creating the ASEAN single window. Also, this is the developing, actually by ASEAN, but also the international level, also they are also creating national trade platform or national single window. They're actually connecting each other, but some of the countries are not developing yet. But see, release the customs cargo, fast clearance, this is a key for traders. Then for maybe your e-commerce, the expertise, just I want to understand.
So let me, on behalf of the audience, may I get your permission and see if I can clarify and simplify your question as following.
Okay. What is the overcoming logistics in
All right.
South Asia from
So
the
you do your
e-marketplace
business.
perspective?
What are some key cross-border challenges? And I'm going to add something to your question because I think it will help the audience. What are the key cross-border challenges? And how are you using technology and digitization to address some of those cross-border challenges?
Well, I'm really afraid the answer will disappoint you. The biggest problem is trade barriers. It's as simple as that. The moment a country is protectionist and it erects a lot of trade barriers up, goods just don't flow through. And that is the biggest problem with logistics today, especially in e-commerce. A lot of what consumers are buying, mobile phones in Indonesia, trade barriers, you cannot bring it in. So you have to bring it in domestically, and the reality of the situation is that they're all smuggled in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
From the customer perspective, also their duty and tax estimation. This is also key for us. Customers need to understand what is the duty and tax. But actually, this is also a bit difficult for us, more of the consumer, to get the amount of the duty tax before the goods are bought.
Yeah, so I think these are all things which a digital platform can resolve. So I think we've seen Singapore do a lot of this to good measure. I mean, they haven't erected the Physical E-Commerce Act yet because it's a lot harder to implement than it sounds. It's a lot easier to do it with services because it's easier to chase the big legit companies, but try chasing a small Chinese merchant selling. Good luck getting the cash back. So the fundamental problem with trade flow in Southeast Asia is simple. It's just trade barriers. Second would then be how can digital platform help? The ability to capture the right amount of tax for the right goods allows for much better customs clearance. Correct. The fundamental problem where goods used to move in large quantities meant that if a single consignee for 10,000 phones, it's a lot easier to clear. The paperwork used to be simple. But when you move to a container having 10,000 consignees, because a single consignee is one phone, the paperwork's tremendous, and that's where the digital platform comes in, and Singapore's fantastic at that. But that's because we are open borders. But the moment your borders is closed, it doesn't matter how much digitalization you have.
Now, other than trade barriers, which is obviously a huge thing, what would be number 2 on your list for cross-border issues in your business?
So a big problem, not necessarily a big problem, would be FX. So that's if the goods can come through, yeah? If it comes through, somehow or another magically appears on the shores. Money still has to move to the merchant who sits on the other side of the fence. And many times the problem is the merchant who sits at the other side of the fence has equally large barriers in cash. An example being China. How do you move cash in and out of China? Again, big problems. So I'm sure Janet has ideas there as well. I mean, for us, we deal a lot with cash.
Yeah, this is the topic I want to ask you, the payment, that's the cash,
So we take the cash, we collect cash on delivery, we pass it to UOB, and UOB does the magic.
Correct. Yeah, it's a good point. Actually, we're talking to the Peter, it's come from the Czech Republic, talking about the different payment,
We're going to keep each question short. Now, just before we move on, anybody from this side of the room where there's some interesting cross-border issues that you deal with and you're sort of using your digital capabilities to address them?
I think with regards to moving products across borders, I think there's the traditional way of thinking that you need to use a logistics company to do it, whether it's DHL, Yamato, or whoever it is. But the way that digital has actually changed the way goods can move actually goes, it's actually how can you, instead of saying that you have to use one container with 1,000 different orders stuffed into one 20-footer container, how can you actually use the people that are flying on SQ or whatever it is, or Scoot, across these different borders to be able to move these products?
Crowdsourcing, almost.
So if you can do that, your ability to move these 1,000 orders by being able to use that human being and to effectively transport these products, you've, in some form and way, kind of negated all these trade barriers and tariffs that are enacted today. And that's really where digital has actually changed the way people transact, because there are different products in the market today which allow people to consume products from all around the world, and it may not be available in Singapore, may not be available in Indonesia, but because someone's going to Jakarta tomorrow is able to bring those products over.
I was going to say that Chang Wen followed Yong Chi's suggestion to throw me the most difficult question. But I was going to make a couple of comments. I think in China, the big boys, if you remember Singles Day in 2017, right? Where Alibaba did 27 billion of sales in one day, right? That was the Singles Day. It broke all records in the past. And in China, the thing that they used a lot is 三流合一. 三流, I will speak in Mandarin, I will translate. 三流, 资金流, 物流, 信息流. Right? So you have money flow, data flow, and goods flow. They could do this in China in a big scale precisely because of the fact that it's one big country, there is no foreign exchange issues, and data, I mean, unlike in the case of Indonesia, as we sit in ASEAN, all data must reside in Indonesia, right? So if you do business in Indonesia, you know, everything has to be onshore. You can't take data out without the permission, of the government, right? So the cross-border issues are real. To tackle all three at one go will be humongous because data, goods, and money flow have to be, worked through different regulatory bodies. And therefore, we could start with the most basic. If you remember, the MAS in trying to pull Singapore to become a leading fintech center as a smart financial center, I think 2 years ago, had the inaugural FinTech Festival where they pulled all of the ASEAN players, both the regulators, so the central banks and the OJK and the Bank of Thailand, in wanting to discuss what is one way that financial institutions and FinTech can help to enable this digital economy. At the end of the day, of course, because we are all banks, it's about 资金流, it's about money flow. So how do we facilitate money flow when there's still foreign exchange controls? Well, it can start by having countries that are bilaterally able to collaborate. So if you remember, in the FinTech Festival last year, in November, I think Ravi Menon, MAS, mentioned that between Singapore and Thailand, Singapore, we have this thing called Pay Now. So UOB with a customer with a mobile phone can pay any other customer in a mobile phone within the banking sector using peer-to-peer payment. We will be able to connect to Thailand. Same thing. Thailand has the same phone-to-phone peer-to-peer payment called PromptPay, right? So this is what was being announced, that between Singapore, someone sitting here can pay someone in Thailand through this conduit, because two governments are willing to collaborate. So I think the way to overcome, cross-border challenges is not by trying to conquer everything at one go, but to find friendly partners, parties that have common objectives. If we want to truly enable trade in ASEAN, we truly want to enable goods flow, data flow, and money flow, and we want to enrich the whole economy, then connecting, bilateral parties, maybe, or tri-parties, maybe we find another friendly party to connect, will be the way to start. And then the rest of the parties could look at it and say, oh, there's a lot of value. If I'm not in it, then I'm in the losing end. And then they would join. And that, I think, is how we see digital enabling platforms that will help to transform.
All right. We have a new question.
Hello. Hi, my name is Dan. I run a company called Soccer to help youths to discover their soccer friends and to bring to self-discover future work and to bring them online to offline to prepare for the future. So my question is around human capital. Digitalization requires people to be aware of trends, especially when businesses are moving so quickly. So my question is kind of, I think, towards Joel and Janet, because your businesses are really quick, trying to get across borders. Are there challenges that you see within your organization in terms of learning, keeping track of trends, and is there anything that you wish graduates coming up from universities could change the way that they learn so that could match what you need to grow your business? That's all.
All right, let me take because I'm trying to think, gee, how would you answer that? So there's two questions that could either be quite separate. One is, how do you keep aware of trends, right? Right? Then there's a related, but in some ways a quite separate question on what would you like your new employees, your young employees, to bring to you, implied in the series of your questions, so that it helps you keep up with trends. Can we sort of chunk it the way I summarized it?
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Whoever would like to take a pass at that?
You want me to speak first? Okay. Yeah, okay. So, speak to a topic close to my heart. Three things, I think. I think one, on manpower. That's absolutely most critical. It's front and center in everything we do. Because without talent, the digital economy cannot be embarked on, right? So, three comments I would make. I think one, there is a lot of new ways that the existing students in the universities or in the polytechnics or in schools can, be aware, and that is really keeping track of what's happening by participation, right? It's not about, not about just talking about it, but by doing. So even in the MAS FinTech Poly 100, we do that with the polys. So they send interns to banks. We provide mentorships to the polytechnics. And we have actually gone through many rounds. UOB ourselves, we run a FinTech innovation accelerator called the FinLab at Block 79, Bash. And through that, we have seen cohorts of Ngee-Ann, Nanyang, Singapore Poly, interns that have come to us, and we provide mentorship. Because that's one way. That's one way. But I think the second way would be, for us as well, in UOB, we have, across the bank, 25,000 employees. Myself, I have a team of 5,000 people across different countries. And most people tell me branches are going to be transformed, and I agree. It will not be the same mode and fashion. So we need to invest a lot in ensuring that our staff remained relevant. So a lot of that is working with WSG as well as, ecosystem partners to train, reskill, as well as get them to understand and embrace digital. So anything from digital awareness to coding to design thinking, are things that we've done. Happy to share more with you offline. And then the last bit, I think you have the second question, right? Around the fact that how do we
keep aware of
trends. So we have many different parts of the bank. I have my esteemed partners over here from corporate banking, from wholesale banking, from transaction banking, and all of it. Basically, it's getting the whole bank mobilized. The Chief Transformation Officer is none other than my CEO, right? So he said, we need to be relevant. The board that the bank has are extremely interested. The board, in fact, I've got a board member here, really. They send me, things that come my way every now and then, all types of blockchain and fintech and digital platforms. So basically, everyone take part in it. They themselves are constantly in the know, and every part of the bank is on the watch out to see whether or not things that are happening outside, can we, engage, collaborate? And if not everyone results in a collaboration, at least I can bank all of them.
Any other comments about keeping aware of trends? Gwenda, you're in an area where it really is impossible to keep up with the trends. And your comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts to that, I suppose. It's not sufficient just to be digitally savvy or digitally ready, but I think it's also important to make sure that your employees, so the workforce, or even the new graduates joining the workforce, are aware of how to keep themselves safe in cyberspace. And the one way to think about it is, in the physical world, we live in the physical world, so we're familiar with all things physical. And it makes sense for us to lock our doors before we leave home. We lock our cars before we, leave it at the parking lot. But these simple instincts may not come as naturally to us because many of us in this room I suspect, may not be digital natives. We may be digital immigrants, meaning that we did not grow up with technology. And it is a challenge to get people not just to embrace technology and to figure out what it can do for them, but also how to keep themselves safe. So simple things that, and on our part, we are pushing out like a national cybersecurity awareness campaign and stuff. But I think something that companies can do is also to continually educate your staff on what are the dangers of, say, phishing emails. Just to give you an example, phishing emails, basically when someone sends you an email with a malicious link, it may appear to be from a bank, it may appear to be from Google. You click on it and it directs you to a fake website where you enter your credentials thinking that it's the real organization. But eventually, what you've done is actually just turn over your credentials to someone with malicious intent. Just to give an example of how this could have really severe impact. Hillary Clinton, when she was running for the presidential elections, one of her key staffers, he inadvertently clicked on a phishing email that he thought was Google. He put in his login credentials, and that was how the hackers gained access to, I think, 50,000 of his emails, and that was extremely damaging to the campaign. So this was clearly a politically driven kind of attack, but it could happen to businesses, and I think there is a role for businesses to play to continually educate staff, remind staff. What some companies do is to kind of send out phishing emails to all their staff, and you see how many people click on them, and then use that as an opportunity to educate and to remind people that this is how we can keep safe. Because as an organization, you're only as strong as your weakest link. The minute one of your guys clicks on something, your entire network or your computer system is compromised. So I think that there is a role for companies to play to educate your staff.
Okay. Now, we have two more questions. Paul, your question.
It's Paul Griffin from SMU. I was wondering how the panelists saw the future of transformation and digitization. We've got a lot of disruption recently, last few years, although industry has been transforming. Is this just a bubble of transformation which will end? Or are we now moving into a situation where innovation, transformation is part of the whole DNA of a company and needs to be put in place so that it's kind of future-proofed for the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Right. So for whoever wants to take a pass at that, rather than speaking about it at the 100,000-foot level, speak about it very specifically in the business you're in now and the visibility that you have, because then you could talk about it more insightfully. Are we sort of like there, or are we at the beginning? And if we're at the beginning, what do you see as some of the big transformations to come?
Or will it actually end?
Yeah.
Or just get more and more?
So I think it'd be difficult to talk about what lies ahead, but how transformation will look like, and will they be from big companies or will they be from small companies? Maybe I can give a slightly interesting insight to that. So I think we have reached a stage where a lot of innovation is being thwarted by cash burning. You look at what SoftBank is doing. Are they investing in the most innovative company, or are they just investing in a company should let them and then using the pure amounts of cash to thwart any innovation competitors can come up with? I mean, that's an interesting insight I've seen. If you look at the venture space, I'm sure you've seen the venture space as well. A company which is highly innovative, but without cash, still loses out to a company which is innovative, not so innovative with cash. And you just use cash to power through a lot of these innovations. And what you're seeing today is that companies are not as innovative internally, but they use a monopoly or cash printing machine and take that cash and buy innovation and stifle innovation and consolidate innovation, which may not be good for the economy. So where's transformation going and all? I think it's questionable if the culture is one of strong innovation or it's one where the giants win and they stifle innovation. I mean, you just have to look at China for that. Everything is either with Ali or Baidu or Tencent. And if you're up against them and you do not take their money, you know that regardless, you will lose, almost. So, I mean, just my take on things. Obviously, it's not 100%, but that's where I see a lot of things going.
Other comments?
I somewhat disagree, although I understand where Chang Wen you're coming from. I think we all know that there is innovation, there is change. I think what is not often appreciated is that the changes are in fact happening at a more rapid pace than actually slowing down. If you look at the Schwarzberger report, right, it took radio 38 years to get 50 million users. It took television about a third of the time, 14 years. It took iPhone, Apple, 3 years to get 50 million users. And, innovation is happening and the pace of innovation is actually increasing. It is a very interesting time in history. The Greeks, ancient Greeks, have two terms for time. One is chronos, the root word for chronology, which is sequential time as we know it. And the other is kairos. Kairos is that important crossroads of time where talent, opportunity, innovation meet, right? So you could look at, say, the transformation of Singapore from third world to first under our first Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, as a kairos moment. A very brilliant man, but he needed to be supported by a brilliant team, and he needed to get re-elected general election after general election from a population that was tired of colonial rule and tired of Japanese occupation. So you could look at Britain under Margaret Thatcher with very draconian rules, how much hardship it caused and how quickly she was voted out of office. So, we are at a point in history where you are in the middle of a market that is growing at a rate of about 200% per annum and has done so for the last 30 years. All we need to do is look, northwards towards China and see an economy that has grown from near poverty line to the second largest economy in the world with what's their GDP over the last 20 years or 25 years? 10%? Some years maybe a little more, some years maybe a little less. But 10% per annum growth over 20 to 25 years has seen a country like China emerge from near nothing to one of the largest economies. Today, the US economy is 18 trillion. The Chinese economy is 12. A 6% GDP growth in China is relatively a bad year. A 2% growth in the US is considered a good year. With a 4% differential, you'll have China catch up in the next 20 to 25 years. So we are looking at a fundamental change. I mean, this is a time in history where very few people will have the opportunity to witness. Your penetration rate, handphone's almost 1 per person on the planet. So you broadcast on your mobile device, and everybody hears about it. So you have a very great opportunity. It's also a great challenge, right? But it's, to me, a very great opportunity because you can reach out to an audience that you never could before as a business owner. You are in a position now to, harness this rising tide, and a rising tide carries all boats.
So I may interject. So quite strong feelings. I agree with you. I think innovation is increasing at an increasing pace. But the real question is there democratization in innovation? Is innovation increasing really fast by being held in the hands of very few? And then the real question is innovation meant for the good of all or good for a few?
There are figures to show, at least in some major economies, that the concentration of economic activity in larger enterprises has actually been increasing, despite all the talk about startups and whatnot. So the concentration effects are very real, happening in parallel with what we're seeing with the innovation. Yes, ma'am.
Question?
Please.
I want to thank all the panelists. We learned a lot from you. Actually, what my question is all linked up with what you have said just now. So I want to ask, from a consumer and for a layman, and also for an aged person. So, no, you see, put aside the rule and regulation. Basically, Alibaba can run the whole country based on what Janet has said. 物流, 资流, 信息流. They mean money and flow and logistic flow and data flow. So straight speaking, if there's no rule and law and control, Alibaba can help people, like Joel said, how to have a more effective life. Because my husband and myself today, I can see that all the administration of our personal life, I throw to my husband. Income tax, road, license, all these things, I don't want to handle. So he handled everything. I can see he's very busy, you know. And renewal insurance, and book air ticket, and so on. And why they say older? So the question is, China have Alibaba, but whether the Chinese government will let him to manage people's life in a very effective way. If you really look at Alibaba way, you don't need a bank, you know. So you can say disruption, right? And then you have this data flow, you can pay direct. And why all these old people struggle so much? Correct? So if you have somebody really say, okay, you join me as a member, I manage your life. You manage my medical needs, you manage my grocery, you manage everything. So whether Singapore have somebody link up and do this. And also you talk about, no, they mean you really one-stop service, you see, and with all this, and just now we talk about Japanese lady, how to make money. So the old people, some of them, they don't know how to invest the money. If they have children, the children will help them. But like you say, if Alibaba would really tell them, okay, don't worry, everything I've got managed for you. So a Chinese in China can just live the life to Alibaba.
Well, any comments?
But in Singapore, we have our Akong also.
Check whether my regulator is here. Okay, no. Okay, I'm just kidding. I think, Mrs. Yifun, maybe two responses. That's why if you observe, in the case of China, there's a WeChat Pay, there's a Alipay, right? So if you're in WeChat Pay, you're not in Alipay. If you're Alipay, you're not in WeChat Pay, right?
That's not true.
Okay, I mean, you can be in both, lah. What I mean is that if you are in Alipay, you are actually in the Alipay ecosystem. Alipay does not connect to WeChat Pay. I mean, you as a customer, you can be both in WeChat Pay and Alipay, of course. But Alipay and WeChat Pay do not link to each other. That's what I mean. Okay, that's what I mean. So it's like you go to a checkout counter at Robinson's and you have 8 POS, and then you said, all the POS don't talk to each other. So in the case of Singapore, right? In the case of Singapore, and this is just the thinking behind, right? So MES is saying just have one standard called SGQR. Whether you are Alipay, WeChat Pay, Grab Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, UOB Mighty Pay, and any other pay, yeah, I should not mention the rest, okay, is using the same SGQR. I have Jeremy there smiling at me because Liquid Pay as well, right? Everyone will just use SGQR, right? But that is a platform that's open to all, right? And then we compete back on how we serve and engage the customers, right? Rather than have two very dominant closed-loop systems that kind of dominate, and then to Chang Wen's point, become a lot more powerful because they get the data. They get the data, they know about you. And if you look at UK, right, with the PSD2, but also with the open banking, about controlling data, it will be to the individual's prerogative to permission, right? So I think you know that in Singapore they are having this MyInfo. They will capture everything. And if we trust the government, then all our life, our ID and every single record is in there, right? But then you have the prerogative to permission what you want to be able to be shared with your insurance company, your hospital, your bank, and everything else. And then comes the part. What if the party doesn't know better? Here comes the most critical part, which is really about making sure that the digital awareness and education and literacy goes up. I think forums like this helps to have the dialogue, but we need to do a lot more and to make sure that there's no digital divide. Right? We talk about the rising of the youth, the millennia, but there's also the silver economy. In fact, the silver economy is growing at compounded rate across the whole of Asia Pacific, Singapore included, Thailand included, Japan and China, right? So I think this is the part that we want to make sure that the digital divide does not leave behind. And for me in UOB, it's exactly what I do. That's the reason why the branches are still there, right? We still serve virtually every single party who comes in to understand what this whole thing is about, right? I mean, in turning cashless, we want to make sure that we don't leave no options to people that just cannot accept or haven't been able to embrace. And that's the reason why banks as a platform, provide that additional ability to link the online to offline and offline back to online. And that's our responsibility.
Any other comments?
Yes, I think that there needn't be too much apprehension. I think as long as there is a real demand coming from a sector, there will be business entrepreneurs who will build towards that need. So, it may not be well fulfilled now because really the aging population is a phenomenon that has started but is not yet in full swing. But in due course, when the demand is there, it will be met, I believe. The other point that I wanted to touch on was really the big data. If you look at the space around you, it is really the guys who are connecting every one of us with every one of us else, WeChat, WhatsApp, Facebook, that are the real contenders. This is the space to watch because the big data they derive is phenomenal, right? Today, if a 60-year-old Indian took life insurance and another 60-year-old Indian took life insurance, they pay about the same premium, right? Now, the guys at Facebook with the big data understand one guy goes brisk walking 5 days a week, the other guy is overweight and orders medicine online, right? What that tells you is they have big data supporting that the guy who's fit is not going to have any medical problems for the next 15, 20 years. The guy who is not may be diabetic by the time 3 years down the road, right? They can structure insurance in a very different way. It's amazing how little insurance companies actually know about their clients. Until you start a claims record, they don't know the client at all, right? Unless you're taking a very big policy, but generally they don't. So the problem here is that you will have guys with very deep insight into the space, and they understand, I can insure the first guy who's fit with my eyes closed because I'm not going to have any trouble with him. And the other guy, I won't, right? So this is the kind of changes in the marketplace that will actually fracture, because today both can get insurance relatively easily. But over time, it will become more expensive for those who are high risk, much cheaper for those with low risk. And these guys operate across industry. They are not just banking, they are not just insurance. So when they start to engage the space, it will change. And the reality is, if you look at, let's say, the last horseshoe making company, what are they doing? They're looking at cheaper horseshoes, they're looking at easier to install, they're looking at longer lasting. And then the auto industry comes along and blindsides everybody, and then they are obsolete overnight. So I think there is a real need for organizations to really look inwards and say, well, I'm banking, but can anyone else offer banking in a manner that can outdo me, or insurance? So that's really one of the things to watch going forward.
Can I talk specifically? I guess you mentioned earlier about the aged and elderly, right? I mean, I thought it may be useful for me to actually share more about specifically what we do. So, for example, in Japan, where we operate, we work together with Japan Post. Japan Post is like a Singapore Post, the National Postal Service. And Japan has a severe aging population where, if you look at Tokyo, you see you still see a lot of migrants coming into Tokyo. But if you look at the smaller prefectures outside of Tokyo, into the, once you go up the peninsula, you actually start to see really ghost towns, right? Because the folks there are just so much older. They're in their 70s, their 80s, and they're in good health, but they just cannot sustain those towns anymore because the folks are just not able to go down and shop and go to market and all that kind of stuff.
And the young people have migrated to the big cities.
Absolutely, right? So what Japan Post came to us was where they are as a post office, they're not allowed to close post offices in Japan because they actually served as voting centers. So if they close a post office, they actually lose votes. So they have to keep a post office open. But where mail has also dramatically dropped in terms of letters to be able to send to houses. So where we are working with them is saying, how can we use the technology that we have to enable these post office centers to basically become multifunctional. So we are approved to do pharmaceutical deliveries, as an example. So we can deliver to houses and do really that last mile of it, which is really if you're going up the little hill to go to the old lady's house to be able to deliver, whether it's an apple or some medicine. I think that's really where we are in terms of trying to work together with them. And to do that where the elderly aged folks are, they may not necessarily be technologically savvy because you're saying, hey, this old Obasan has never used an iPhone before, doesn't know how to click. So that's really where you then have to make software which is really kind of like super simple, super clean, super easy, right? Where you see one apple, you click one apple, it comes to you. And I think that's really where we want to be able to provide that level of convenience and more importantly, working back to how do you make that life easier and simpler. And I think where Joo Seng was saying about the information which is gathered, I think where the credit card companies are, they actually, or the banks actually, they have phenomenal amounts of information because they know where every single transaction is. So when someone buys through honestbee today, it's a Citibank credit card or UOB credit card. But where they have is that they see a single line item that it spends $15 at honestbee, $15 at Pastamania, but they don't know exactly what they have bought at Pastamania. Was it a single person eating it, or was it a family that's buying that meal? And that part is where then it gets really interesting because now we are able to work with insurance companies to provide them that higher level granularity with regards to specifically, is my household trans fat heavy, or is my household super organic and very vegetarian? And when that happens, that allows you to then physically tweak premiums, tweak the credit scores and all this kind of stuff, which allows you to get to where it then becomes more democratized in that sense, where an unhealthy guy is not subsidizing a guy that's super healthy.
Which is why you will see the rise of ecosystem partnerships, because then no one can do everything by themselves. And when you combine 3 different parties, the delivery, maybe the telcos, the postal, and the banks, you actually get a much richer, view of how to help the end customer.
We're going to head towards wrap up because our audience has been good. We have one person who has been so patient and so persistent that we are going to honor this person with our last question.
Thank you, Professor. My name is Sriram Iyer. I'm the founder of a company called Perfect Attire, which is a custom menswear retailer. And my question is directed to Mr. Chang Wen. So prior to Ninja Van, you've successfully founded and exited Marcella, which 5 years down the line, I'm, let's say, following on your footsteps. So based on that experience of digitalizing a traditional industry such as tailoring, and from your experience, what would you like to share with someone who's 5 years junior and trying to build up something similar to what you did?
The best advice I can give you is, looking at you, I think you'll be a lot more successful than me. Because you dress a lot better, and I am fashion unconscious.
Yeah.
So maybe this begs a more important question. Digitalization all sounds good, interesting buzzwords, right? What's really important about fashion? I realized after 3 years doing that business that what's most important about fashion is being fashionable. In the business, we weren't. We focused on supply chain, we focused on disruption, but these were not important for the business. Being fashionable, and someone buys your clothes, he feels proud. When someone bought masala, some, not all, they felt cheap. Oh, I saved money. I bought a cheaper but equally good product. But that cheaper word keeps ringing through in their head. They were not proud to wear masala. They bought it because it was decent, cheap, and to me that's not the way a fashion business is successful. That at least is my honest opinion on why we had to move out of that business. Because I'm very uncomfortable wearing shoes and pants and this right now. And I think that speaks volumes about my passion about fashion.
All right, well, since you've all come to a university for this lecture, and I think most of you are from the general public and not from SMU, I don't want you to go home feeling unfulfilled. I want you to feel like you've been at the university. Therefore, I'm going to give you a reading assignment. All right. Last July, I happened to see, I read a lot, and this thing is by 2 MIT Sloan School professors, and it's got a simple title, Machine Platform Crowd. Machine Platform Crowd. It's very well written, it's accessible, no formulas, no equations, right? But, it's sort of serious reading, you got it, it's nonfiction. But if you want to understand platforms, the 3 chapters in here are for you. They're written for the general public who, strip away all the technicalities, explain to me, for those who understand the deep economic principles, but put it to me in plain English, why platforms change the basis of competition. That's the second title. Now, what I like about this book is that they say, what's driving the digital revolution now? It's not just one thing. There's the data analytics and the machine learning, what they call the changing relationship between machines, machine minds, and human minds. There's platforms and what platforms do to economics. And then they also have the third word, the crowd, the ability for companies to pick up data and ideas from a wide range of people, often non-specialists. And they give some examples of how you bring together the machine intelligence and the data, the digital platforms for both all digital, online, offline, as well as the ability to use these platforms and the analytics to bring in ideas from a wide array of people beyond your company and beyond your own vendors. And wow, you sort of see this force that we're doing now. So everybody, here's your reading assignment, Machine Platform Crown. I would like to thank our guests for being honest, earnest, really sharing about what they do. These are people doing great stuff across a variety of sectors, some good diversity, and I thank you for the questions. With that, let's wind down. Thank you, everybody.